English. I'm not bilingual, like perfectly bilingual. I can manage, but I don't speak English often, so I might hesitate on some words. Um, Chloe said, if you have questions during the presentation, don't hesitate and raise your hand, and I'll answer the questions as best as I can. So I'll share my screen with you. Take a minute to do that. I was looking for the presentation. Sorry. This way. So do you see it properly? Yes, okay, thank you. So I'm a social worker that works at the CAAP. So I have a social vision when I make the complaints, but I am also a complaint advisor for the CAAP. I think it's important. It's my little specialty. So who are we, the CAAPs? We're a non-profit community organization mandated by the Minister of Health and Social Services to assist and guide user in their complaint process. We are independent from Health and Social Services Network, so I think that's very important to know. Um, we are governed by a board of directors, a conseil d'administration. I'm not sure if that's the right translation, but you understand what I mean. Um, and we have the CAPS have a federation, so we are a member of our federation. We give help, assistance, and information support in two areas. So we have like two in health and social services rights. So we help user in their rights in the health and social services, and we also have a new mandate for the residential housing law for seniors in certified private senior home. So that's new. Our values: listening, empathy, openness, confidentiality, respect, and with equity. Our mission. So is our mission is to facilitate the complaint process undertaken by users who are dissatisfied with the health and social services. And we have a new mission that started in on April 1st, 2019. So we help like seniors when they live in a certified private residence, um, resolving their issues with the lease that they have. Yes, Donna.
Sorry, could you just explain what is certified? What do you mean by certified private residence as opposed to a private residence?
It's when the CIS is involved with the certification.
Okay, so it's not if they have the Rose d'Or, I think, certification. That's like a
No,
group. Okay,
no, it's the certification of the minister,
okay, thank
health minister. So they have a list, and we have to check it. And if it, like, because those residents, we can make a complaint about the services. So if the services are not, like, let's say a nurse, or the food is not good, we can complain to the commissioner. But if there's a problem with the lease, now with our new mission, we can accompany them to the Tribunal Administratif du Logement.
you. Okay,
So
thank
there are some CAAP, like I'm from CAAP Laurentides, so I help everybody that lives in the Laurentians. But there's a CAAP in every region of Quebec. And I can also help people. Let's say someone comes for a vacation in Saint Agathe, and they have an accident, and a skiing accident, and they go to the hospital and they have a problem at the hospital. They can ask me to file a complaint with them to help them through the process. And it could, so even though the person doesn't live in our area, I can help them because they got a service in our area. So that's our two mandates with the users' right in health, la L4S, in the health, social, and social services, and the housing law for, it's not every senior, it's senior in private residence. So it's important to know the difference. So basically, our service is to inform, to give some information, to give some references, because sometimes they call us, but they want to, they have a problem, let's say, with getting a doctor, but unfortunately, we cannot do anything for the list to help people get a doctor. So we're going to tell them where to write, or we could refer to any organization on our territory that can help them with their problem. So we help people through the complaint process. I'm going to talk about the process after. We give support and advice. Of course, we listen, and we can help writing the complaint letter. And for the part with the senior with the housing law, we can help them to understand the law, like la Régie du logement, but now it's called the Tribunal Administratif. So we can help them understand their rights and their obligations. We can help them to get some options and to find a solution to their problem. And we can facilitate the reconciliation between the senior and the landlord. And we can even accompany the senior to the Tribunal Administratif du Québec when the cause goes there. So in the L4S, in the users' rights regarding health and social services, all the institution, organization that are under the cover of the complaint examination process. It's the CIS, Integrated Health and Social Services Center, Integrated University Health and Social Services Center. We write that because I can make complaint for someone that lives in the Laurentides but has a complaint to do for a hospital in Montreal. I can do that. So the CIS also, hospitals, residential and long-term care centers, CHSLD, local community services center, if they have if they're financed by the PISA, they go under that cover. University hospitals, rehabilitation center, youth centers, community organization, ambulance services, family type resources, intermediate resources, private seniors residents that are certified. So this is the process. So the person has a problem. Let's say the person went to the hospital, she was dropped by the préposé. She wants to file a complaint. So the person can call me. I'm going to help the person, I'm going to understand the situation and help the person write the letter. I always write it with the person and we write it together. The letter is sent to the Service Quality and Complaints Commissioner, and the commissioner has 45 days to analyze the complaint and send her conclusions. If the person is not satisfied with the conclusions, she has the right to go to the second level, which is the ombudsman. There's no delay, no time limit to make a complaint to the ombudsman. And the ombudsman usually should take 60 days to analyze the complaint, but it can take more time because they have so much things to do. So sometimes with the Sans Jeunesse, it takes years. So you have to be patient. To go to the ombudsman, the letter it needs to be a written complaint. If it's a verbal complaint, you don't have the right to go to the ombudsman. There can also be medical complaints. So if the complaint is addressed for a doctor, then it's not the commissioner that will analyze the letter, it's a doctor, so it's a medical examiner. The medical examiner, has also 45 days when the user gets the conclusion. If the person is not satisfied and thinks that the medical examiner did not do his job properly, the person can go at the second level to the review committee, but the complaint needs to be filed within 60 days. Sometimes the medical examiner sends the complaint to the Council of Physician, Dentists, and Pharmacists to be analyzed. And we can also send a letter to I'm sorry, I'm looking for even the name in French. Um, le, le Conseil des médecins? Le Collège des médecins, I'm sorry. I couldn't remember in French what it was. So we often send the complaint to the medical examiner and the Collège des médecins at the same time. So I'm sorry about that part of the presentation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry.
On your last slide, and
Yes.
maybe you said it and I just missed it because I was reading the slide at the same time. With the 60 days, is that 60 days after having received the reply from the medical examiner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There. So who can file a complaint or report an abuse? Because I'm talking about complaint, but we can make a report also. It doesn't imply the same thing, but I'm going to explain it to you. Oops, I see a mistake there. I added a, so the complaint or the report can be anonymous, mostly the report. A complaint is very specific to the situation, and it's harder to be anonymous at that time. So anyone can make a complaint if they're the user or if they're the legal representative of the user or the beneficiary or legal representative of a deceased user. So it's a legal thing to file a complaint. So the person needs to be the person herself or a legal representative. But if it's a legal representative, it doesn't have to be like written by law. I have it's when you give a consent to, let's say, to the assist to give some information, you can just sign a document that I have. So the complaint is done like that. Reporting is a bit different because sorry. I clicked for myself and it changed everything. Sorry. So reporting is a bit different because anyone can report a situation of abuse or a problem that affects the right of the user or the resident. So let's say a worker in a CHSLD see something that is wrong, the worker can report the situation. It can be anonymous also. The only thing is that when it's anonymous, the person won't get the results, the conclusions, and the person is not allowed to go, of course, to the ombudsman because it needs to be a written complaint. But the person can make a verbal complaint also. The person just won't get the written conclusions, and there's no right to go to the ombudsman. And I always say when it's written, it's better because you get like proof of what the person says, the commissioner says. And who can help you? Like there's different organization within the process that users can use. First of all, when a situation occurs, let's say in a residence, there's always user and residence committees, or often at the hospital or in some residence and CHSLD. So people can try to go to them first and try to solve the situation. Sometimes they can accompany them to talk with the worker. Even though some jeunesse also, DPG, they have a committee, users committee. So they accompany with the social worker even. So sometimes it helps to solve a situation that is happening now. Let's say at the hospital, they go to the committee and they can right away solve their situation. The person can, if they want to file a complaint, they can call directly the commissioner and they will give the information. They will take the complaint, but it's often verbal when they call, but you can write to the commissioner and they will take the complaint also. And the CAAP are there to write the complaint and help the person through all the process and give some information, and sometimes to call the commissioner and say, okay, where's that complaint? Did you finish it? And do you have your conclusions yet? So we help throughout the process. Do you have any questions on that? I guess not. So I don't see everybody, so. Yes, Donna?
Sorry, not a question, but just more of a comment.
Yes.
From experience, I know that the commissaire aux plaintes, the Service de qualité complaints commissioner, if you are not related or directly involved with the person as in relationship to them, you do not receive the conclusion of the complaint. So if you're a neighbor who files a complaint because you saw or you were aware of something happening, or even a famille d'accueil, you don't receive the conclusion of the complaint. The complaint is treated, et cetera, but you as the complainee does not receive the conclusion because you are not related to or directly, you're not husband, wife, mother, father, child of the person.
Well, you don't have to be related. You need to get to sign. The user needs to sign a document to allow you to represent her. So if you don't send that document with the complaint is not treated as a complaint. It's treated as a report. So that's why there's no conclusions.
Okay.
You absolutely need to have the document saying that you are legally allowed to represent the user.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, it could be like I have a document that I use that is accepted. And for some seniors that are in residence and they have the mandate, it needs to be mandat homologué. I don't know how to say that in English, but it needs to be that.
Okay.
So, but the law is changing with the curateur soon, next year or so maybe it will change everything, but until then, that's the way the commissioner works, and they're very strict. Here, they're very strict. Even though when I write a letter, the first page is an authorization to send me like l'accusé de réception, there's a recipient acknowledgement, something like that. And I don't even get the conclusions. They don't send it to me, even though the person allows me to get them. They send it to the user and the user chooses to send it to me or not. So they're very, very strict with that. So the rights, there seem to be a lot, but it's because they separated some rights that are usually like together in the law. So you have the right to access to your records and file, get some information about the services, get appropriate services, choose a professional of your choice and the establishment, that to get the care commensurated with your need, to participate in decisions, to get information about your state of health, consent to your care, lodging in the CHSLD and residence, end of life care. You have a right to be accompanied and assist to your appointments, to be represented, to get respect and dignity, to remedy, and to get the services in English. Unfortunately for that, I've made some complaints about that, but when they don't have anyone that speaks in English, like it's hard to get that service to have that service, and that's sad. But they should try. And I've made some complaints about the forms that are not sometimes in English everywhere, and that's also a problem. They have all the forms in French, and people need to sign before an operation, let's say, and the forms are in French, and they don't have anyone to translate, so that's a big problem. So example for possible problems, I'll go really fast with that, but if you have some situations maybe in like really fast, if you want to know if it could be, someone could file a complaint for that, could answer that also. Concerning the material resources, like the quality of food, the lack of privacy, the mixed clientele in rooms, hygiene and cleanliness, unadapted premises, safety and security, concerning their financial issues, hospital and ambulance account, interpersonal issues, that's almost always there in the complaints, lack of respect, of empathy, the care received was not personalized, exposure to violence and abuse, lack of confidentiality, service issues, the waiting period to obtain required services, refusal or lack of services, service continuity, and the follow-up, care issues related to professional assessment and judgment, the treatment, medication restraints, and isolation, decision made and interventions carried out, organization of care, and availability of resources. Is there anyone who wants to maybe share a situation or? Was there something on the chat, Chloe?
Someone was a bit late and just said hi and sorry she was late.
Okay, no problem.
Good.
Okay, so there's no question on that. Here I just put some information on abuse. We've been talking about that for a couple of years now with the 115 bill. So just a reminder of the abuse that can occur in the system, like in the CHSLDs and residents, so psychological, physical, organizational. So maybe during the COVID period, we've seen that a lot, the lack of workers. So sexual abuse, ageism, I don't know if I pronounced that right, and material and financial abuse also. So you can read that, get your reminder. And we're putting that because since the 115 bill, there's an obligation for the workers to report all situation of abuse in residence, CHSLDs, and institutions. So there's an obligation to do that. And the commissioner should treat those complaints in priority. So that's that information. Oh, and that's it. It was a bit short, but here there's a toll-free number that everybody can use, like for all Quebec, and the service redirect the phone calls in the right CAAP. But the direct number is there, and 225 is my extension. And in CAAP Laurentides, I'm the only one that takes the English complaints because I'm the only one that speaks English. And my email is there because during this COVID period, it's really easier to get a hold of me by email. So is there any questions?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, please.
Just one question, please.
Yes.
When you say the CAAP Laurentides, does that include Pays d'en Haut?
Yes. It's we cover
Okay, thank you very much.
all the Laurentians.
Okay, well, I will be calling you then.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Maybe you send me an email with your number and I will call you back.
Okay, I just want to know if you could come and do a presentation at the Comité des usagers Pays d'en haut.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, thank you very much.
Andy has her hand raised.
Yes.
Yeah, Julie, I was just wondering if you could kind of give an example of what the follow-up would be. I mean, you mentioned about like a written letter and then the ombudsman, but you know, if you had an example of somebody like in our situation, a lot of times it's people that don't get served in English, or they not only do they not get served in English, but the person is like very rude about it and somebody filed a complaint. What would the follow-up be to that? Like, is the person reprimanded? Is there courses offered? Like, what is generally the step that somebody gets a result about?
Well, it happened once. The person was complaining because like she didn't get any, no one or almost no one spoke English in the hospital. And all the forms were in French. Good for her, she spoke a bit of French, so she could manage, but she wanted to have the documents in English, so we made a complaint. Of course, the personnel, like the workers were, the bosses met with the workers and they, because there was an attitude issue also, so of course that is reprehensible. So they get the meeting and people tell them, "Oh, be nice and explain." But when there's no one that speaks English, it's very hard to get the service because they don't have anyone, and they don't have like it's not. They don't. I don't know how to say that. They don't have the obligation to hire people that speak English. So that's a big problem in it. Like even if we go to the ombudsman, if there's no one that speaks English.
That's where I'm a bit confused, because you like on the rights, it says we're supposed to have the right to be served in English. And yet there's no obligation to hire people who speak English. So that's a little bit of, obviously you're going to run into some problems there if you're not hiring anyone that can speak English. So I'm just wondering, like, why encourage people to write letters and go to the ombudsman if the follow-up is not going to result in anything changing?
My opinion in every complaint is more you file a complaint about something is going to get done. Like if no one ever complains because there's no one speaking English in Argenteuil, well, why would they hire someone if no one complains? If you make like 50 complaints, maybe they're going to hire someone. It could be a garde de sécurité or anyone that can translate. Or they're going to make sure that they can hire maybe a translator or something. They will have to do something eventually. So that's always what I say. Sometimes the result is not good now, but maybe with the second and the third and the 50th complaint, like I work to make sure that one day I don't have any more job because the system will be perfect. But so
okay, thank you.
I don't know, like it's hard to answer that question because it's a big problem, but usually they find someone that can at least speak a bit English and get that nurse or that préposé and the person is translating. I'm trying hard with the documents though, because they can share the documents in some hospital. Let's say in Saint-Jérôme, they have some forms that are in English. Why don't they send them to Argenteuil or Saint-Eustache or Saint-Agathe, you know? So.
Yeah, I believe that the CIS is currently working on that.
Translating?
Well, on generally being more able to serve the English-speaking community. It's always baby steps, but the baby steps are being taken right now. So people need to speak up and they need to request documents. I think it's also awareness. People aren't aware that the documents are available in English. There's also they don't always talk to each other. The information doesn't always get everywhere. So I think they're working very hard on trying to fix exactly that problem for the English speaking community.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. Is there any more questions?
I've just been wondering if the current situation, largely due to COVID, has increased. Have you been seeing an increase in complaints, or are people sort of just laying low and understanding that some of this is due to what's going on with COVID?
I would say at first, in spring, there was a lot of complaints about COVID, but now I think they understand more and there's less, especially in the residents in spring. They were like in prison. The seniors couldn't go out of their apartment, go in the hallways for a couple of months. So that was a big issue. But I think now it's better because the rules are more understood and they're applied properly. So it's a bit less. I have now it's more the complaints about if you were waiting for an operation and you were delayed. Now it's more those complaints that we get now, also now because of the restraints that we have right now. So people come and say, well, I've already waited and now I have to wait again. So, and that's being a big problem for the operation that are delayed. But we don't have that much. Debbie, I think, did you have something to say? We don't hear you. You need to open your mic.
When the question of confidentiality, what happens if someone's sitting under a sign in a hospital that names the clinic with the disease? That is not, like if I'm sitting under a sign that says AIDS clinic, then, it identifies me with that diagnosis, and my confidentiality then is compromised. I know it works well for the hospitals, but there are many, many clinics that are named with the disease.
Yes.
And obviously, if someone's sitting under the sign, it can be a real compromise for people.
Yes, I understand. I've never had any complaints about that, but I think that could be a motive of complaint.
Okay.
I don't know what would be the result, but you could try something.
Well, and I realize it's difficult. I mean, like the diabetic clinic, on Tuesday at X hospital. But, in a way, it's having that name posted is really, it really identifies.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something could be done about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Kimberly? We don't hear you. We don't hear you. We can't hear you.
Who is it?
It's Kimberly.
It's Kim.
Oh, there we go. Is she? Oh.
No, we can't hear you.
Maybe type your question in the chat, Kim. It seems like your mic isn't working.
Well, while Kim's looking for that.
Wait, I'll let her talk over here.
Thank you, Betty.
Sorry, technical issues.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I was referring to your classification of complaints as they come in. I'm sure you quantify them and classify them as such. And just when we're talking about complaints in reference to language specifically, would you have a percentage of the amount of complaints that are related to language issues, i.e. English?
Less than a percent.
Less than 1%?
I think last year I did 1.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of complaints about that. Because I think there's a lot of people that are bilingual, so they understand French enough and they don't make complaints. And that's my guess, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And
because
part of
I made a lot of complaints in English, but they all the person could speak French.
Right.
So I guess that's why they don't complain, even though they don't get a service in English, like in the hospital or somewhere else.
Okay.
But I don't know. You would probably know more than me, because they would probably tell you that they didn't receive the service in English and they're complaining to you about that, but they don't necessarily. Well, no, not all people call me. Maybe they can call the commissioner directly.
Do you, is the classification of your complaint something that you have available to distribute?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes, we will have our annual report ready soon. So maybe we could send that out.
In reference to complaining, do you feel it's more productive as to say it as a report than a complaint?
Yes. It's better complain because you have the conclusions. And you can do something else after.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is actually a subject that we've been discussing in our LESAN a lot.
So sorry, Betty, that's okay.
Often people don't want to be seen as complainers. They'll complain to their families, to their friends while drinking coffee, but they won't because they sort of feel like they don't want to be complainers. They still got the service, but they need to know that it's important to file a complaint, call it feedback. So that it changes. And when you're vulnerable and you go into the hospital and they're speaking medical terms to you, the importance in that moment when you feel so vulnerable that you understand completely what's happening to you, because we are already a bit dimmed when you're really, really hurt. You don't understand, and then not getting that information said to you in the language of your preference is a big problem. Yes. People have trouble saying, I'm going to complain officially, because you know, they don't want to be seen that way. They rather just tell their friends. But yeah, we do hear it a lot. And then we say, well, why don't you do something about it? And like, oh, no, I don't want to complain.
Well, at least they could probably do file a report, anonymous report. At least they will signify this situation to the hospital, the service, but they won't be identified.
Because I think this isn't clear. They think CAAP is always official. Something's going to be written down. They're going to give somebody my name. I can get repercussions. My services will be cut. People have all these stories in their heads that block them. But if they know, okay, I can do this, they are there to help me and it will be anonymous. I'll just give them feedback that there is lack of service in English. I think that needs to be made clear, and you clarifying it here today and us telling people and the information just getting on there is out there is very important.
One of the problems is that as soon as they realize that you can speak French, they don't see any reason to try to speak English. I'm fluently bilingual, but my native tongue is English. So I feel more at ease if somebody explains something to me in English. I've had different problems in the past, but they don't understand why you need it in English, since you can speak French and understand French. That's a big problem also. So they just write you off. They say, well, we don't have anybody who can explain it to you. And I have to be truthful with you. I'm wondering if the French Canadian or the French speaker who speaks English, and I don't want to insult anybody here, can really explain it. You know, if you get a translator in, will he really be able to explain the medical terms? You know, that's another problem, because I did translation. That doesn't mean I understood what I was translating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, so it also brings up that concern that Dee Dee mentioned about you know, privacy issues, because you know, Julie, I know you mentioned like, oh, they'll find somebody that will help. It's like, well, I don't necessarily want a security guard delving into my medical file to explain things. So I think I don't know, it's tough because like you said, we hear a lot more, and I think every single English speaker I know has had an unpleasant experience medically with the language issue, but you know, not everybody is going to take the time to go file a complaint if they think it's this big thing, you know? So maybe there is some work to do there about like explaining that it's not necessarily a huge undertaking if you want to give some feedback to maybe improve services.
Mhm.
I think also that because the turnaround on the complaint is such a long time, 60 days, 45 days, people say, oh, I'm not even going to bother. So I let Chloe's idea of feedback or suggestion, they soften the approach than calling it a complaint.
Mhm.
Just because there clearly is a problem and people are concerned. So feedback might be a better term.
And even this is open to feedback or people letting them know. They're saying, please, please, we can't help you if you don't do it. So there's a lot of ways. There's the CAAP, there's the CIS, there's the users committee. People just need to know and take that and just do it anonymously if they don't feel comfortable, right?
But you know, Chloe, I know that in our residence, there are English-speaking people, and it's a French residence. And I'm just wondering, when something happens to a person in the CHSLD, and he's alone or she's alone, there's nobody there to help them at the time it happens. So then they tell the story or whatever happened to their caretaker. Some believe, some don't believe, because they say, well, my mom or my father has problems, so he must be fabulating, you know. I know my mom, when she was in the hospital, during the night, she would walk in the hallways, and the nurse grabbed her once and brought her back to her bed, and she was black and blue the next day, and nobody believed her. I believed her because the nurse came in and she wasn't even able to look at me. So I said, uh-oh, something going on here, you know. So I think that doesn't help neither, that the elderly that are in the residences, when things happen, they're alone, they're vulnerable. People say, well, they don't know what they're saying anymore, they're on medication. So I think it's very hard for them to even be able to express what they're going through because nobody will believe them. That's my opinion. Sorry.
Well, I can say that I believe everyone that calls me, and I always find a way to write it. Even if sometimes it seems a bit, you know, hard to believe, I always find a way to write it that will be accepted.
But let's say I'm a caretaker and I phone you for my mom or my dad. Okay, and I tell you something happened, but you're not getting it from the person it happened to. Do you want to see that person afterwards? You want to meet with them and see really what they have to say? Or will you take it on my word?
I take it on your word.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you don't have the signed paper to be the legal representative, I will write it as a report.
Okay, thanks.
But if you want to be anonymous, I will, like sometimes this situation is too specific to be anonymous. But if it can be generalized, I will do that. And I will make it general so you can file a report, and it could be an employee that filed the report, or, and sometimes, you know, I have some calls and I take a lot of time with the people and listen to them, and I even write the letter. When I send it to them to sign and to send to the commissioner, they don't want to do the complaint anymore, and that's fine.
Okay.
Like, doesn't matter to me if the complaint goes through or not, because I think that when I write it down, the person feels better, and it helps the person to, you know, just see maybe the situation differently, or ease them with the situation. And if they're not ready, they can just send it later or not. So,
do you sometimes advise people, because sometimes people won't tell the people are responsible in the home or wherever about the event, so it goes unnoticed? Do you sometimes advise people to go and see the person who's responsible and let them know what's going on? Because I mean, from past experience, we know that if somebody does something with one person, they'll do it with others. You know, it's not just one person here, but we just don't know about it because we're not talking to each other. So do you advise them too? Okay, you don't want to make a formal complaint. Maybe you should see the responsible person and things like that, you know?
Well, I think in life, when something happens to us, we need to talk about it to the person directly. So I often advise that, but it depends who the person I'm talking to is and what is the situation. But yes, I talk about that to everyone. Did you try to talk to the social worker in this Tanjanas? Did you try to talk to the landlord? Did you try? Yes, I did, but okay, so okay, that didn't work, or I'm afraid. Sometimes they're afraid and they won't do it. If they don't have anyone in their family to help them with that, we can go through with the complaint or not. Depends. You know, everybody is different. Everybody has their own capacities and needs, and so I try to and sometimes they say, well, can you tell me that I won't have any consequences about my complaint? The law says you're not allowed to have consequences, but you're dealing with humans, so I cannot assure you that you won't have any. So it depends. Sometimes they do. Sometimes people do have consequences, but depends on how you can manage that. So every situation is different, but sometimes, you know, probably they do the same with you. People call you and they tell you the story and they're like, oh, thank you. You've been listening to me. Nobody listens to me. So that happens to me all the time. Sometimes I spend 2 or 3 hours with the person, you know, working on their file, but they say, oh, finally, I won't do that. They won't do anything. Okay. But they feel better because they talked.
Fear is an awful thing.
Yes,
fear
it is.
It's unbelievable what it can make or not make you do. It's unbelievable.
Can we assume that the CAAP is really an ombudsman and that we can tell everybody, you say you didn't get many complaints about language. Maybe that seems to be what most of us are talking about here. And could we just say that we just fire them into you and then you basically make the people feel better about it or understand, listen? Would that be a possibility? Instead of trying to approach the institution, it might be easier to go directly to the CAAP. I don't know, just a question.
Well, if people are afraid to talk, maybe you can send them to me and I can write something about the situation, because the CAAP can also file a report. So when it's anonymous, it's the CAAP that files the report. So if they talk, but I'm not an ombudsman, so I don't have any power to change things. I only have the power to send a report or send a complaint. But
well, you become an intermediary, so yes, the person then will get satisfaction because at least they've spoken to somebody who has an open ear or a listening ear. Yes,
and I can file a report and say in that hospital there's a lack of like they need workers that speak English, and of course it would be better. Like I'm French Canadian and I speak English. I think I understand properly, but when I write the letters, it's not like if the person was born like an English speaking person born. So the way I write the like my letter is I don't translate because I can think in English, but it's not the proper way. It's not like if someone was, you understand what I'm saying? I have a problem saying it, but it's not the same thing. Like in a CAAP in Estrie, we have an advisor that is English. She speaks French, but she is English. So her thinking is in English, and the way their letters are written, they're like if it was an English speaking person that wrote it. But I'm gonna have my letters corrected by her now, so the level of English will be better.
So Julie, so then if I phoned you and with a complaint and I'm willing to, it doesn't have to be anonymous. When you write a letter, do you write it in English? Because
Yes, of
I've done
course.
the complaint in English.
Yes, it is. I write it in English. And
And-
from now, I open a file at the CAAP, and from now I'm gonna write all my notes in English also.
Okay.
To make sure
What-
that if you need to get your file, it will be already in English.
So when you write the letter, do you send the person who's registered the complaint, do you automatically send them a copy of your letter?
Yes, because I'm not the one that's sending it to the commissioner, and I write the letter as if I were you. So you need to agree with that letter and you need to be comfortable with the letter. So I'm sending it, like I write a draft, I'm sending it to you. Let's say it's you that's filing a complaint. I send it to you. And after that, I call you and we work it together. And you say, oh no, that's not what I meant. And that's not a proper phrase. So I have someone correct me at the final draft, but we work it together. So you're comfortable with it, you're in agreement with the letter, because you need to sign it, not me. You sign it and then it's sent to the commissioner. And if it's anonymous, I will send it to you anyway. So unless the person doesn't want to, but when it's a report, anonymous report, I send it to the person if she wants, and I work it with the person.
So you write the letter for me, but is the complaint then, I know it's my complaint, but in the process, is it coming from you or is it coming from me?
Well,
because I could just sit down and write a letter too, or get the complaint form and just submit it.
You could, and there's a lot of people that do that, but sometimes people are not like comfortable writing the letter. They want it to be written, but they don't want to write it. So like you tell me your story, I write it down, and I add often some information like law and some rights, and I had a bit of my touch, and then I send it back to you, and like let's say I'm Julie Sirois, and I went to the hospital on December 24th, and like the preposé dropped me. So I'm writing it like that, and then I'm adding the rights. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. June, maybe? Oh, you just closed your mic. Okay. No, it's closed again.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, now.
I just wanted to follow up with you about the forms becoming English in the hospitals, because that's an issue that our LESAN Pays Now has been fretting about for years. And I think it was 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, we got to the point where there was translation or will to go on with translation, but as it worked its way up through the system, the hospitals realized that their French forms had become outdated. And before they invested in translating the English forms, they did a full review of the French forms. And that's how we sort of got put off at that point. So you're saying now that a hospital like St. Jerome has some forms available in English. And I'm just curious, would that also extend to things like the pre-op and the post-op booklets that have very specific instructions for people that are important that they're able to follow in their own language? And this whole idea of the hospitals sharing this information goes way back to, years ago when we were saying, if somebody's got it, why don't they share it? So do you see any movement on that really happening?
I don't know how much document they have in English, but I saw some, but I couldn't say it's like all the hospital that has some. I even translated something for someone.
Okay.
Just a note on that, since 1 year there is there is somebody who's dedicated to the English speaking community, the hospitals or the users can reach out to that person and say, this document has not been translated, and she will make sure that it will be. So there is possibilities, but people have to let the CIS know and this person know which is responsible for this. So if ever you have needs for the English speaking community, please, please, please reach out to the CIS and to Camille Harrigan, who is in charge of this. So she is your partner in this, and the people at the hospital, the nurses, the doctors, they can request this information. A lot of documents have already been translated. Staff sometimes just isn't aware of it.
They don't know where it is.
Yeah, they don't know where to find it. They don't know where it is. They didn't get the information on which forms are translated, but there's a huge list of already translated material. If what you need is not on that list, please let the CIS know.
Could you send me the coordinate of that person?
Yes, of course, I'd be more than happy.
Because I could, every time I get a complaint, I could contact her and tell her.
Perfect, I'll do that.
The last thing I wanted to ask about was, you explained well about formally lodging a complaint. And I didn't really, prior to today, understand about this reporting part of it. So being where I am, where I hear from people who are members of the cancer support group, and that I often hear about their experiences in hospitals and things, and problems with language or the way they were treated by one person or another. So in that kind of a situation where there really maybe isn't the desire to make a formal complaint, then I could send information to you about the fact that, you know, in a recent situation, this person was not very well treated, you know, with English, and was just basically told to speak French and speak up, and those kinds of things that go on. I didn't really know where to send that kind of, you know, more generalized feedback. So is that something that this reporting process can be used for? And if we send information to you, how specific or not do you need it to be? You would want to know the name of the institution where it happened, I suppose, and like what is useful to help you figure out what to do with it?
You could file that report. Like, it doesn't have to be a person in your group. You could be the porte-parole of your group, of the group. I like details, so you can tell me all the details, and I can maybe sort them out and regroup. And so, of course, the name of the place that it concerned, that helps, because they won't know where to send the recommendation. But if you get a lot of comments about the same thing, so it's easy to make a general report. And the details that don't identify anyone, that's perfect, because I always write details because I think it helps the commissioner to understand the situations.
Okay.
So,
anyway, I'm glad to have learned about that aspect of this today, because I think often people aren't really, they don't have the desire to get into a complicated formal complaint process, but are okay with providing feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's long. I know it's long. Let's say for a complaint that is like, the person waited 36 hours in the emergency, that's very fast for me to write. I'm going to write that in half an hour, it's sent and it's done. But for something that happened, that it's emotional, and like someone died, so it's very emotional. So it takes a lot of time for me to understand the situation, to write it down properly, to work it with the person. It could take like 2 weeks for me to finish a letter that is longer and more emotional. After that, it's 45, like the time, I always say, send it by email. It's easy, it's faster. So it's after that, it's 45 days for the conclusions. And then, so you're a month and a half, almost 2 months there. After 2 months, you get the conclusion. So by the time I get a copy and we talk about it and you're satisfied or not satisfied, if you're not satisfied, I write the letter for the ombudsman because I do that also. So I mostly talk about the things I didn't like in the conclusions of the commissioner that I wanted to be different. So I write about that. So it's another week and sent to the ombudsman, and then it's very long. So it takes a year almost for a complete complaint. So it could be very long. DPG is longer than that. There's some complaints at the ombudsman that have been there for a year. So it's been almost 2 years. What can you do after 2 years? But sometimes the results are good. And in mental health at the hospital, at St. Jérôme's Hospital, I had some bad conclusions with the commissioner, but the ombudsman saw things that we didn't even ask, like contrained, like the person wanted to be allowed to go smoke outside. That was a complaint, so that's okay. But the ombudsman saw that the person was restrained a lot, and that was the conclusion that the ombudsman came up with, and we didn't even talk about that. So sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's disappointing. And for our medical complaints in the Laurentians, we like for 2 years we had like only one medical examiner, so the complaints took eternity to it. I am having some conclusions of complaints that I made that we filed in 2018. So it's long, but they're trying to. They have more medical examiner now, and they're trying fast to resolve, like to give the conclusions. They work hard.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Sorry, Julie. I'm wondering if there's, I know you mentioned the process of who can complain and things like that, but I'm also wondering if something comes up, I see stories in the news often of people that were unhappy with something that happened at the hospital. Is that something that is immediately picked up and followed up with by the ombudsman or by the CAAP or anyone, or if it's in the news and pretty widely distributed, or it really has to be initiated by the person who experienced it?
It has to be initiated by the person who experienced it.
Okay.
Because it won't be accepted at the commissioner's office. But I've had some people write a complaint with me, and I'm only responsible for writing the letter and sending it to the person. After that, the person does what she wants. And I've had some person go to the news, and their complaints were treated faster because of that.
Okay.
And sometimes they go, they hire some lawyers, and like when the complaint process doesn't stop anyone from doing anything else. I'm just not involved, but they can still do whatever they want. Go to the Collège des médecins, go to les ordres professionnels. Also, I have a lot of complaints about social worker in DPG that they go to the commissioner and they go to the ordre professionnel, social workers, ordre professionnel at the same time. They use my letter to go there. I'm not allowed for now to write a specific letter for des ordres professionnels au Collège des médecins. But if I wrote a letter for the commissioner, they can use my letter. That's the way I work around the system. I just change the address and I take out all the names that are not touched by the complaint. Are there any more questions?
Well, if anybody after has any questions, I'm pretty sure that we could just email
them in.
So if ever anybody comes up later, thinks about this presentation and has questions. Thank you so much, Judy. That clarified so many things. And I think just to know that there's possibility to do this anonymously, to file a report, and all the guidance that you can also give to people. For sure you can do it by yourself, but to know that you can also provide all that guidance and the knowledge that you have is very important. So thank you everybody for participating, and thank you very much, Judy, for this super presentation. And I find your English was excellent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I need to practice more, but thank you.
Well, this is
thank you for being there. That was very nice. And it's my first time on Zoom, so it's fun.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
So have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day, and don't be shy to send me an email, and we can talk, and I can call you, and we can talk about situations if you want some information and some advice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.